Good day. Militia captain sent me out here today to stand guard, keep my eyes open. So here I am. I've had a lot of inquiries about the sizes of an oilcloth for a shelter and how one can stay warm and comfortable in a blanket, just one blanket. So I'll try and explain about those two items today. Comfort is relative. If I'm sitting at home in my wing chair, I'm comfortable. It's about as comfortable as I can get. But right now I'm sitting on a wooden log and I'm comfortable here too. It's not a problem. Now if I was sitting in the snow, naked, I probably wouldn't be very comfortable. But not as uncomfortable as I would be if the wind was blowing and it was snowing at the same time. So you've got to think of things in that way. If I'm sitting under my shelter in the pouring rain on a bed of sticks and I'm dry, then I consider myself comfortable. I consider myself fortunate, and it feels good because comfort is relative. Now as to size of an oilcloth, people like big oilcloths, but the fact is that the more oilcloth you have, the heavier it is and the bulkier it is. And I doubt very much whether any woodsman ever went and ordered himself an oilcloth from a sail maker or a tent maker. The chances are that he came across a piece of oilcloth somewhere, and maybe a wrecked boat, a wrecked canoe, and goods laying around and an oilcloth, and he'd take a look at this oilcloth and he'd spread it out. And just say, for instance, it was 12 by 12. He'd probably cut it down the middle and cut it down the middle again, and he'd have a nice size piece. It's what, 6 by 6. Now, this woodsman might be like me, almost 6 foot. He might be shorter. He's not really considering about how much cover it's going to give him. What he's considering is how much weight and how much bulk am I going to get out of this piece of oilcloth. So that's what he does. So my oilcloth is probably about 7 by 6, 7 by 5. I can't even remember, I've had it that long. And can I stretch out in it in a rainstorm? No, I can't. Because I've only got 6 inches above my head and 6 inches below my feet. And if the wind's blowing in that direction, I could get some rain blowing in and I'm going to get wet. So what do? I curl up. I draw my legs in and I move down to centre myself, so I've got more space at the head and more space at the feet, and I'm comfortable. Okay? In the night I might want to just stretch out my legs and then pull them back in again. But that's all I do. And that's all I need. That's all I want. So my advice would be, forget about a 14 by 12 oilcloth, because it's just too big. Same goes for just plain piece of canvas, if that's what you want to use, a piece of sailcloth or whatever you may come across and you decide to use. Now, as far as a blanket is concerned, how do you stay warm and cosy in one blanket? Well, in real cold weather, you don't. And again, comfort is relative. If I didn't have a blanket, I would be even colder. But I do have one blanket. 2 blankets are going to be too much. Great for keeping me warm, but too much bulk, too much weight. So I carry one blanket, and that's generally what woodsmen carried. Many didn't carry an oilcloth at all. They used the blanket as a shelter in the rain. Now, personally, having tried it, I'd sooner just wrap the blanket around me in the rain if I didn't have an oilcloth. It would keep me warmer, and I'm going to get rain on whichever way you look at it. It depends, I guess, on how much the wind's blowing and how cold it is. People say, well, that's okay where you are. Your winters don't get as cold as they do around here. We're in 40 degrees below. Well, you've got to ask yourself, what is their scenario for being out in the woods in 40 degrees below? Who would be out in 40 degrees below? Why are you out there? Now, if you find a good reason for being out there, then fine, take 2 blankets. But I think you'll find that it was common, if there's snow on the ground and it's 40 degrees below, that people pull the sled behind them. And that's what they carried their gear on, not on their back. The French, for instance, the French military, they had one tarpaulin between 4 men. Now that would probably want to be a fairly big tarpaulin, and it would probably weigh a fair bit, and I can't see any of them carrying it on their backs. So I should imagine that one of them would have the job of pulling a sled with the tarpaulin on it and the rest of their gear. It makes sense. We know that sleds were used, and I guess if you were going out hunting too, that would be on foot, that would be a good way to bring your game home, would be on a sled. There are plenty of reasons for going out in 40 degrees below, but not plenty of reasons for staying out all night. How far are you going? What are you going there for? These are the things to think about when you start packing to go on a trek. Have a good reason for going. Fair enough if you just want to go out in 40 degrees below and see how you can survive, do that. But do bear in mind that if there is snow on the ground, you probably would be pulling a sled and not carrying 2 bulky blankets on your back with the rest of your gear. I think that's all I have to say about oilcloths and blankets. I hope that clears it up for most of you. I never have said ever that I am 100% comfortable all the time. That isn't why I do this. I go out in the winter and I camp because I want to experience what it was like for woodsmen 300 years ago. And not only that, but I like to test my own skills. I like to improve myself, but I don't want to improve on the equipment and the gear that they carried. What they carried, and that was it. You don't start making yourself canvas sleeping bags and all that sort of stuff, because you find that's what you need to keep you warm. If you're not able to survive on what they had, then you're doing something wrong. You either A, shouldn't be out there in 40 degrees below, or you should be paying more attention to what they did to stay alive. Now, in my blanket, I carry a wool waistcoat, a wool shirt, a Monmouth cap, and a pair of mittens. And when I stop at night in the winter, I put those things on over my other clothes. I'll take off my frock and I will put those clothes on top of these, and that will keep me warm. If it's really cold, I'll stick another woolen waistcoat in. Also in the winter, I usually wear a half blanket, like a cloak over the top, so that helps as well. If I perspire on the trail, I take my clothes off, I warm them in front of the fire, and I dry them first before I put them back on, because if I don't, then I'm going to freeze at night. So these are the things to think about. When you're starting to think, I need to carry another blanket, you should be thinking, what did they do with only one blanket? Now, I know for a fact that people wore 2 shirts, they wore more than one waistcoat, at times they even wore 2 coats. So that's a fact. So that's what I do. And that is how I survive. I'm not saying I'm comfortable. There are times when I'm uncomfortable. There are times when the fire dies down and I'm so cold it wakes me up. And then I restoke the fire, cover myself back up again and go back to sleep. And that's just the way it is. Okay, now I think I really am finished. Thanks for watching.